Hi, I'm Taylor Hamel, and in this video we're going to show you the progression of climbing systems from the Blake's hitch all the way up to today's modern SRS hitch-based systems. A Blake's hitch is tied in a loop system, so I have my anchor point here over a limb and two legs of rope. I take the tail end of the rope here, measure out a particular length that works for me, and I'm going to tie a termination knot. Here I like to use a half a double fisherman's, a barrel knot, a scaffold knot, whatever you want to call it. Really, it's your choice. I prefer a cinching knot here that'll stay nice and tight on the carabiner. Okay, so I'll tie that in. Now I'm going to create a bridge from this part of the rope to the falling part of the rope. And I start wrapping up the rope. I make 4 wraps. Right? Come down, and this is the important part. I want to trap that bridge between this leg of rope and the falling part. So I'm scooting underneath it, and then up the first 2 wraps, or the bottom wraps, outward like that. We're going to tie it, dress it, and set it. And I'm going to put a figure 8 stopper knot here for safety. Now what I've done here is basically created a loop system, and I can add rope into that loop to lengthen it, or I can take rope away. I can shorten it by just moving the Blake's hitch either up or down on the rope. Let's take a look at how that works on the tree. All right, we're up here climbing on a Blake's hitch. That's a very simple system, a loop of rope basically, and I just pulling on the top of the Blake's hitch with a thumb and a finger in order to create length out of it for movement. Nice and easy, simple. Where it gets troublesome in a very basic setup like this is coming back in from a limb walk. So I don't have a slack tending pulley or anything here to tend the slack. That means I need to get my hand underneath it in order to push the knot back up. So in a position like this, I've got to hold onto the tree or do something, put my positioning lanyard on. I can't just easily take out slack. So I need to physically pull and then push up on that knot to shorten it, which can be just a bit fiddly and problematic here, where I want to hold on with one hand and tend slack here. I can't do that. I have to get creative, or just make it easy on myself, put my positioning lanyard on, tighten that up. Now I can lean against that, and I can get both hands underneath and pull. What makes tending slack like that easier as well is giving yourself a longer tail here so the hitch is further away from you. And that's fine for grabbing underneath it, but it's really not fun when you're moving away from it and leaning out. You need to have it relatively short so you can still grab. So it's a compromise between the two. A nice benefit of the Kinesi Max harness, for example, a lanyard in here, I can extend my adjustable bridge and get that hitch further away from me so I can grab underneath it with both hands and take longer pulls. Then when I am back into a position where I want to shorten it up for a limb walk or whatever, I can easily shorten the bridge again with using the cam system, and now that hitch is easily within reach. Every climber should know how to use a Blake's hitch, how to tie it, how to set it up. You don't even need a carabiner here to do this. You can tie this directly into the ring. So if you ever find yourself in a position where maybe you dropped something, you dropped your rope wrench, you dropped your positioning device, you can simply pull up the tail of your rope and tie a Blake's hitch, and you'll be safe and secure, and you can make your way through the tree. Now that we've looked at the basic Blake's hitch setup in the tree, let's add in a slack tending pulley. Here I'm just going to use an Ultra O carabiner and a Pinto pulley. There's a million ways to do this. You don't have to use this particular equipment, but it's what I have on me now, and it's a pretty quick setup. So I'm going to clip that into the bridge ring there, and what that allows me to do is utilize the Pinto pulley as a fair lead and a slack tender, so I can tend that slack with one hand. Now let's take a look at that up in the tree. What I've done here, just very simply added a carabiner and a Pinto pulley as a slack tender for this. So what that allows me to do is with one hand, I can adjust and take in that slack as the pulley pushes up on the bottom of the hitch for me. So this is a fair lead. It's fair leading the rope into the bottom of the hitch, and that allows me to keep my one hand free for balance. Now this is a little bit cluttery here and bulky, so let's look at some ways we can clean that up a little bit. Okay, now that we've looked at that up in the tree, let's transition to an open system using an English prusik. With a split tail system, in this case I'm using an English prusik, but you could use another length of rope or whatever, but I'm going to terminate the end of the rope to the carabiner, and I'm not going to leave a long tail this time. So using my scaffold knot, tied, dressed, and set, now I can take, and instead of creating the bridge with this tail, I'm going to use a separate prusik or piece of rope, your choice. Here, just to keep it simple, I'll put in a 6-coil English prusik. Okay, now going to install that onto the carabiner. And you'll notice I'm keeping the end of the rope closer to the nose of the carabiner so I can easily unclip it in order to pass it around limbs and other things like that. So there's your open split tail system. Let's take a look up in the tree. Okay, one of the benefits of a split tail system is that you can navigate around limbs such as this. So a lot of times during ascent, when we haven't isolated the line completely, we'll run into a situation like this where we need to get around this branch. Now if I was tied in with a closed system Blake's hitch, I would have to untie the entire thing, move around the limb, and then proceed. But here, with the split tail system, I can lanyard in securely, and I can simply create a little bit of slack here, unclip the eye, move it around the limb, clip back in, and now I'm secure and I can keep moving along to my destination. All right, now that we've done that up in the tree, let's add a slack tending pulley to this system. It's easy to do. Let's grab our trusty pinto pulley again. I'm going to capture the tail of rope. We'll put the eyes of the hitch cord in between the plates of the pinto. Get that back on the carabiner, and there goes the end of the rope again. Now I have here also a slack tending pulley that's a fair lead combined in a convenient location on the carabiner. Here's an example of a split tail system with a slack tending pulley built right into the carabiner there. So I still have the benefits of the split tail, which allows me to quickly separate the system to bypass limbs or install it in equipment, and I have the slack tending pulley available, all neatly organized in a single carabiner. So a common theme that you'll hear me talk about when working through a canopy is managing slack. We don't want to have big bunches of slack that expose us to a fall or a pendulum swing or just a weird adjustment. We want to keep slack tended at all times as much as possible. So the longer the hitch cord here, or the longer the split tail, the longer the tail on the Blake's hitch, that creates more slack when we're moving through the tree and tending our system. So finding ways to minimize that is a good idea. Let's look at some ways we can improve upon that. Okay, now that was certainly an improvement, but we can improve on this configuration. Here, we're nose loading this carabiner a bit. Let's configure this in a way that loads everything nice and neatly and puts it in one convenient package that's more convenient to use. So what we have here is a Hitch Climber system. This is an open system that allows me to disconnect the eye splice in order to install equipment or pass this around limbs. I still have a prusik here that will hold my position in the loop of rope, plus I have a slack tending pulley built in. Now it's a good idea to have a spliced termination here. It's low profile, keeps it from interfering with the friction hitch, and it's easy to install in friction savers and other hardware. Let's take a look at this up in the tree. Here I have a Hitch Climber system. We've got the Hitch Climber itself that houses all of these components. I've got 2 carabiners. I've got 3 holes in the Hitch Climber that allow me multiple attachment options, but it's a very inline and smooth configuration of components using the hitch of your choice. Tending slack, one-handed for example, is quite easy if I want to use this arm for balance. The slack tending pulley is built right there, and it also minimizes that sit back. There's very little sit back there because the pulley is so close. It also depends on how you tie your hitch and how long the legs of it are. And of course you do have the option to pull in and then tend the slack on the bottom side there. When we talk about tending slack and sit back, watch how when I pull above the hitch, I've got tension in this leg here that's connected to the carabiner, that's connected to the pulley. So it's always keeping that pulley in a position where there's less sit back involved, easier to tend slack. Now, if I change that, for example, and I took that carabiner and separated it to another position on my bridge here, watch what happens when I pull with both hands. As I'm pulling with both hands, now that pulley drops into my lap and I have to reach down. There's more sit back, there's more slack involved. So having that pulley connected here, the carabiner connected to the pulley here makes a big difference. Now that we've seen an advanced MRS system incorporating the Hitch Climber, let's see how we can swap this over to an SRS configuration using a Hitch Climber along with a rope wrench. Okay, we're using different ropes here just for quick demonstration purposes, but of course we could have just swapped that system into a rope wrench on that rope, and portage would have been just fine. But here I have Hitch Climber with some hitch cord, rope wrench, and a tether, Ultra O carabiner, and I've got myself a SRS work positioning system ready to go. Let's take a look at it up in the trees. Great thing about the DMM Hitch Climber pulley is it can easily transfer from MRS to SRS. So here I've got a Hitch Climber set up on a rope wrench system. So stationary rope system, your equipment moves along the rope. The rope is not moving. Whereas in the moving rope system, we had that loop of rope that we're just lengthening and shortening using the prusik. One of the great benefits of a stationary rope system is that your friction stays consistent. Whatever friction you have in the hitch here and the device, it doesn't matter how many limbs you walk over or how many redirects you go through, that friction is going to stay consistent, so you have it reliable and basically in your muscle memory here. It's also very quick to put through a redirect, for example, to improve my position. So I'm going to just create some slack, lanyard it in, of course, pass that system through a natural fork there, tidy up a little bit, load test it, and away we go. Okay, so we've covered hitch-based climbing systems from the very beginning up to the more advanced. Now there's mechanical devices as well that can be used, and you can see those in other tree stuff videos.